Hey, I'm Ari Smith with Riverside Abstract. We are hosting a really awesome event at Riverside Experience. Riverside Experience is dedicated to educating and helping real estate investors, anybody in the real estate industry, brokers, syndicators, owners, absolutely do the best job. We do absolutely the best job in networking and educating and inspiring everyone in the real estate field to be educated on the latest in real estate development, as well as to network and inspire. Today, we have the great opportunity to have Evan Spencer, former NFLer, and Levon, from a former Olympian hurdler. I mean, just watching that in the Olympics, it makes me so nervous because I'm always afraid they might get tripped up. But it truly phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal, and inspiring to watch. And then they got into their amazing journey, their past in sports, and how they relayed into the real estate world. And again, this is sponsored by Riverside Abstract, dedicated to helping you with all your title needs for national, top shelf, top notch title company. And please reach out to us for all your title needs. We help syndicators, especially, starting out. We help owners, we help people, with deals, help you. And now, without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to my good friend, Mark Feld from the Riverside Experience.
All right, Ari, thank you so much. And thank you for helping us get this, this whole thing off the ground. So I'm very excited about this particular program because with everything that's going on right now, we can all use a little bit of positivity and a little bit of strengthening our mindsets and to help us, further our careers. So without further ado, we're gonna hear from these two amazing athletes who've had, some even historic moments in their careers, and hear how they are translating their athletic ability and the skills that they picked up through their time as athletes into their real estate, their real estate businesses. So let's start off with Levon. Levon is a U.S.-born hurdler, and just to make sure everybody knows, hurdling is a sport that consists not only of running full speed, but also jumping over obstacles. Levon competed for the Dominican Republic at the 2012 Summer Olympics. She completed a 100-meter hurdle in 12.77 seconds and a 60-meter hurdle in 8.16 seconds. Both are current Dominican Republic records. So Levon, just knowing that you've accomplished that, like how does that make you feel, knowing that you hold those titles?
I am excited about it. Even though I'm kind of like looking forward to seeing young people try to beat it, and records are made to be broken. I was really excited to break it. I actually broke it probably 20 times over the course of the 10 years that I competed. So it was fun.
And let's many of us don't know what goes into competing at that level. So let's start all the way back. We're going to go all the way back in your life and back to the beginning. So before professional sports and real estate, where did you grow up? And growing up, what sports did you play as like a young child?
So I grew up in Hampton, Virginia. It's a military town, and I started off doing gymnastics when I was a tumble tot, which is 18 months old. It actually is really, really good for like all kinds of motor skills, because we never lifted weights, but we had abs and calves and all that sort of like body control. I ran in the street like every other child growing up, so I always knew I was fast. I played basketball and tennis as well, but I didn't start running track organized until high school.
Uh-huh. And so before during this period, did you show a lot of promise? Like, when did you realize that like you had like real talent?
So there were two transitions. So I always thought I was fast anyway because I could beat anyone in the street, you know, racing light pole to light pole or whatever. But when I got on the track team, all of the people had been running since they were children. So they all like knew what to do and how to train. So I was getting whooped every single day. Like I could not win a rep of a workout. And I told my coach, this isn't fun. So you need to find an event for me that's fun. And he's the person who's like, let's try hurdles. I think that you have like the strength and the power to do it. And so that was the turning point that made me realize like, okay, I think I found an event that I can do really well. It's not like a red ocean filled with people who can probably beat me. So I was in the 10th grade.
But before that, you know, growing up, when you were younger than that, did you even just like, you know, regular, like let's say like a basketball or like a soccer, were you incredible compared to
So
the other
yeah,
kids?
when we were like in elementary school, we do like field days and stuff like that. I never got beaten anything except for one boy beat me in like the 5th grade, and that guy ended up going to the NFL. So that really, I'm like, it's pretty high. I could do
We'll
more
revisit
pull-ups,
that
more
one. Don't
push-ups.
worry.
Who was that? Who
His
was
name
that?
is
I want to know who was
his
that.
name's Xavier Adibi.
Okay, Evan, I may embarrass you right now, but we're gonna go for
Shoot.
it. I'm gonna set the stage right now. All right.
Here we go.
It's the 2015 Sugar Bowl. Okay, you know where this is going.
Oh yeah.
The Buckeyes are playing Alabama Crimson Tide. There's 19 seconds left in the first half. Quarterback Cardell Jones hands off the ball to Jalen Marshall. Marshall flips the ball to you, and in a trick play, you go for the long pass, and you connect with Michael Thomas in the end zone for a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
It's arguably the greatest play in the history in Buckeye history. After this, okay, we see you walk to the bench. You sit down on the bench. You start blinking your eyes. During this moment,
Yeah.
and we discussed this before we started this webinar. What's going through your mind at this moment? This is a phenomenal moment. Greatness was just displayed.
Yeah.
It's an incredible moment in sports history. What's going through your mind right then?
Quite honestly, this will give you a little insight into me. What was going through my head was actually my parents and family who were sitting a couple rows up above me. But the funny story behind it was we had practiced this quite a number of times. And quite honestly, in the walkthrough before the game, I think I threw a better pass rolling out to the right to another player over in the corner of the end zone. So I was starting to get a feeling that we might call it. We go out to dinner. I'm, eating dinner with my family. And I'm showing them this play on my phone. I'm like, hey guys, we actually might run this. Like, I think I might have the chance to throw it. And of course, my mom and my dad both go, Evan, I think you should run. I don't know if you should throw it, right? So of course, play happens. They do their job to contain me, and I didn't have another option. So I high and hard, pass gets completed, touchdown, good guys. And I remember sprinting right to the sideline, immediately to the bench, and I stand up on the bench and I find my parents. I'm like, I told you. So that was the first thing that went through my mind. But no, then obviously the next thing was just recentering, right? Because, at that point, we were dominating on offense. We just weren't capitalizing the red zone, right? Like we were down 2 touchdowns, or at one point it was like 21-6. But we had gone into the red zone every time we got the ball. So just kind of the mantra of that team, it was, listen, like, job done, but, continue onwards, right? You have a bigger and not better job, but, you have to finish this off the right way. So, there was a little bit of a laugh in there, but then it went back to business pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. And then you went on to be drafted by the Washington Redskins, or what are they even called? We don't even know what they're called right now. The former Washington Redskins. I saw that this morning. Mm-hmm. In the 6th round of the 2015 NFL draft. You got injured, and then you went to the Buccaneers. Mm-hmm. So what are if you had to come up with the top lesson or lessons that you learned from your time in the NFL. What were some of the top things that you learned from being in the NFL?
Honestly, it was just learning how to be a pro. It sounds very much like a blanket statement, but to walk into a room with Pierre Garçon, who at that time was a receiver that I modeled myself after. And Pierre Garçon, for those who don't know, was a receiver that was playing for the Redskins at that time. And I kind of saw myself as, right, he was around my weight. He's like 200, 205. He might have been 215, but, from brought a more physical nature to his play, incredible with his hands. For lack of a better term, didn't take SHIT from many people, and that was something that I tried to model myself after. So, learning how to be a pro, always taking a notebook in the meeting room, right, and learning how to take that type of mental focus to the practice field every day was one of the first and most important lessons that I learned from being in there. And then, just continuing onwards, right. Once I got down to Tampa Bay, we had Mike Evans and we had Vincent Jackson, right? Vincent Jackson was, on just from a career standpoint, his one of his third contracts and in the NFL, that is a huge success, right? So being able to just pick, the little nuances from folks like that, they've helped me so much as a person, as a man, right? But definitely, in the business world as well. So really just figuring out how to grow up and, how to treat my practice, like a business.
Right. And speaking about having great hands, I would encourage everybody to take a look at Evan's highlight reel if you want to see some amazing, some plays with great hands. So definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I've always had like the biggest size glove that they make. I play golf now, so I'm over as like trying to squeeze down golf clubs onto my hand when I can. But it's just owning your practice, right? If it's figuring out how to, hey, I'm going to go, 3 steps in between every hurdle and not switch, or, I'm going to go catch 150 balls every day. And before I go to sleep, I'm going to catch a ball and just watch the stripes come into my hand every day. It's about learning how to treat your practice like business, kind of like, I did there, and catching just was no differently. It was what I was supposed to do. So if there was ever a drop ball on the ground, that's my fault. And I got people dependent on me, at least in those instances. So, it's my job to, not put us in that situation.
All right. Amazing. Now, Levon, we all know the Olympics. We all see it, we all celebrate it, but none of us really know what goes into the training process that in order to get to that point. So can you kind of walk us through what does a person who makes it to, how much training goes into getting ready for the Olympics?
So it's an every 4-year sort of a deal that's blanketed around 2 world championships. So what goes into it is, we start training around November. In the particular previous year, every year we start in November. The first 9 weeks is really, really hard. All the things that you really hate if you're a sprinter. So we do a lot of long running, conditioning, that sort of stuff. But I think the most important thing about like training for Olympic sports and things that don't happen every single year is just knowing that every day you're like putting a little deposit of something into the bank for the future. You're not going to necessarily see that it's all coming together, but the vision is there, and you just make your little deposit every day. And if you keep doing it as you're supposed to, you will eventually have all of the things that you need when you need to call on it, because it's only a 12-second race every 4 years. But you have to do that race so many times, and you have to do those reps so many times so that you can basically not F it up.
Right. And how many hours a day how many hours a day are you training for this event?
So typically we train from about 9 a.m. to 1:30. And that includes like the track workout and the weights. And then after that, probably spend another 2 hours doing things that are like preventative. So I'll go to the chiropractor, go get a massage, go get dry needling, go get cryo. And so the thing about individual sports is we're pretty much butt naked all alone. So every single thing that we do, it affects how you compete. So basically my whole life was about training. What time you eat, what time you sleep, how many times you're getting recovery stuff in, you know, every single thing plays a factor.
Wait, but how were you selected to compete in the Olympics? Let's take a step back.
So the Olympics has qualifying standards. So back then there was an A standard and a B standard. So if you make the A standard, you're automatically selected. If you have less than 2 people from your country that does that event. And so Dominican Republic only had, in the 100-meter hurdles, with the A qualifying standard, I was the only person.
Mm-hmm.
So when I made the A standard, I knew that I was going. And I made it a year in advance, which is
That
takes a
means
lot
she
of
can roll,
pressure
guys.
off.
That means she can really roll.
It takes the pressure off of you to then be chasing the standard, because that's a whole nother set of thoughts. But then to be able to now make gains every day and like just say, all right, I'm trying to like make my race better. I'm not chasing the time. I'm going out there to perfect the race. Every race that you have going forward.
Got it. So now let's transition. Now it's your post the height of your athletic careers, and now you're transitioning into your real estate business. So Evan, let's start with you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing? You're actually doing something pretty interesting. So
Yeah.
tell us about your real estate business.
Sure. Well, I think the transition will be a great little segue into that. So for me, I decided to hang them up, right? It's time to now start scratching and in my sense, my economic itch, because I was an econ major. But for me, I wanted to do it in a place of difference, right? So I knew that building a stable business that's predictable and that has some version of, floor, we looked at real estate as being that number one asset class for us. But I still wanted to make, a difference on the back end, right? So for me, and a lot of my friends, a lot of my family members, football, as is with a lot of sports, and especially the ones that are physical, right? You can look at each individual person, and at some point they've had to play hurt. And while doing that, they probably had to take some version of pain management, whether that's opioids or some other thing. I wanted to be able to make a difference in that category, right? So we look at the cannabis industry as being able to deliver that alternative, so that guys who retire and are dealing with things at 40 or at 60, right, don't only have to depend on something that's going to be a net negative on their body. So for me, I combined the two because one, from an econ guy, right, I'm looking at a growing and expanding industry. So it's durably supported. And if you find winners in that space, then, your relative risk is going to be a lot lower. So for us, what we did is we started to find established companies in the cannabis space that were growing, have operating financials, and started evaluating the real estate buildings and positions that they wanted to continue to expand into, right? So it's very similar to any other real estate investment vehicle. It's very focused on these operating cannabis companies that have, and the mechanism is sale-leasebacks, as we're all familiar with, right? But that have a sale-leaseback portfolio that our investment vehicle can come in and influence. But then top to bottom, you just start pulling on those little things that allowed you to be great in sports, right? That creative flexibility. How can I still figure out ways to get the deal done if this side wants this and this side wants the other? All of which started to come to a head when we started developing this portfolio of assets. And then we just kind of went from there on the education standpoint, because they're real buildings, they're interesting cap rates, but more importantly, there's patients on the back end of them that are getting serviced. And that's what we really want to be able to focus on, is being able to help more people see an alternative to medicine.
Interesting. So I want to come back to the economics of the deals that you're working on. Let's go over to Levon. And Levon, why don't you're also doing an interesting business. So why don't you explain what your real estate business is?
So yeah, we focus on multifamily for low income and workforce housing, and partner that with partnering with nonprofits on the ground to provide our tenants with the services they need to grow as families. So our pillars come down to 4 things, which is job readiness, voting, education, and childcare. And so we look for opportunities where we can do value adds in our multifamily, but also add to the social impact as well.
And geographically, where are you where are your investments?
So far they're all in Florida, but our thesis is for the entire Southeast, Virginia South, Texas East.
It's awesome.
And also, so why, and after coming out of sports, why real estate?
So I have a similar background to Evan. My father is a real estate developer. You know, my grandfather owns agricultural real estate. I basically grew up in a real estate office, and I was forced to be like, so it was my most natural asset class to go towards because I understood it fundamentally, but also it's a good combination of all the things I'm really interested in, which is I have the ability to be involved on the legal side, on the security side, because I do have a fund. And so it's just all of the components mixed together, but I like real estate a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I like tangibility.
Exactly. That's a great point.
And once you mentioned your dad, I guess, Evan, let's go over and talk about your dad,
Sure.
Tim Spencer. So Tim played for Ohio State. He had he played in the NFL. He's had a phenomenal coaching career as well. So, what would you say some of the lessons that you've learned? What are some of the lessons that you've learned from your dad?
Man, too many to count, right? But to continue setting that stage, at one point before a few of my friends passed him, he was the 3rd all-time rusher in Ohio State history. He went on to be one of the first picks in the USFL draft, then later went on to play 6 to 7 years for the Chargers, which is why I was born in San Diego. So, first and foremost, not having even been born and then getting to a place where I could start to look at, oh, okay, well, my dad did some cool things as a player. That was an awesome standpoint to look at. So that created a lot of my drive as it relates to football. But then, getting past that, starting to figure out how these things could apply into, my personal professional ambitions. I mentioned one earlier. My dad told me a story that when he first got to the Chargers, I don't remember the gentleman's name, unfortunately, but he walked into the meeting room without a notebook. Dude kind of fronted him up right then and there and said, hey, you never come into an effing meeting without a notebook. Take notes and make sure that you're locked in from start to finish, right? So for me, something very small, something very, what could be minuscule, but for me, it allows me to stay as locked in as possible, to try to figure out new and creative ways that I can relate to folks because I am engaged in what they're saying. So that's one personal and professional thing that's carried over. But on the athletic side, I just was able to be around so many interesting characters, right? And for the football geeks of the world, right? Like, I got to help my dad figure out which running back he was going to pick, whether it was Chris Johnson or Matt Forte. And I got the chance to go catch punts with Devin Hester right after we drafted him. I was able to learn from Muhsin Muhammad, who has the world's biggest hands in the world. But just watching all of those guys go throughout their professional careers was, or at least it allowed me to accelerate my thinking on the world, accelerate my thinking on my professional career, and also my athletic one as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, growing as a kid, that must have been pretty cool having a dad that.
Yeah.
Did you find that a lot of kids wanted to be your friend?
Big time.
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, but I'd say that I use this comment a lot, or this statement a lot, but like, I realized that I was a small circle guy from the standpoint of I've always been outward. I've always been an extrovert. I love people. I love communicating. I love helping. But there's obviously that small group of folks that mean the most to you. And, when you get the chance to look at the Devin Hefters of the world or the Matt Fortes of the world and find out why and how they're so successful. You know, they mean well by everybody that they see, but also they're very focused, and they have you know, that very important group of folks that are around them that can help support whatever those ambitions are, right? Starting a nonprofit, figuring out a way to start your own accounting firm, and or just figure out a way to get the most out of your next contract. All of those were just an acceleration on my development as a man, for sure.
So Levon, walk me through the first deal that you did. Did you raise investor capital? How did you come up with the funds, and how did you come up with the business plan for your first deal that you did?
So the first deal that I did was very small. It was just an individual house, and I used my own money, and that was an interesting experience. Because, you know, betting with your own money is always hard. But I would rather risk my own money and make my learning be, you know, I'm okay with losing for myself. And I actually didn't lose money, but it was just one of those, like, I have to do something myself first before I'm willing to go out there and take something from others. So it was just a single family house. And we built it from the ground up, and placed a low income family there, and they've gained about, well, so we also have a mortgage company. So then I ended up selling it to them, and, you know, they have equity in that home now. So that was kind of like my first thing, saying, okay, I can have a lot of impact by helping people along a journey. But so in terms of multifamily, the first deal I did with a group of my friends who are also athletes, and we paid $500,000 for a 20-unit building, and we paid cash for it because it just was completely a gut job. And I had my cousin, who is a GC, do all of the work, and we ended up reselling that building within a year for 2 times what we put into it. So it was it ended up being a really good situation, and it's a much nicer affordable housing building that takes Section 8. So that's kind of where we started.
And what would be a typical deal that you would want to do? What size? And
So now I look to do buildings that are 80 units or bigger, that have some green space and some growing opportunity. I prefer it to be either that they already have been in the process of receiving Section 8 or some sort of a HUD subsidy, just from a inspection standpoint. But other than that, I'm pretty open. I like large buildings with green space.
And what type of returns do you target?
So I'm typically looking for, after we can rent it up, to be around a 10 cap. So when we get into it, I'm looking to be around 7 at least, and that we can grow it to a 10 cap.
Interesting. And are all these deals all cash, or are you using financing as well?
So we're using financing in situations where we do have income. And so if it's not completely vacant, we will use financing, as long as we have like a 1.6 debt service coverage ratio. Mm-hmm.
And Evan, let's talk about the economics of the deals that
Sure.
you've been doing. So yeah, why don't you? I know you explained it, but why don't you talk about, you know, is there a value add component? Are you guys? I know that it's financing for these type of assets can be difficult for, you know, because of the nature of the tenants. But what's the economics and returns that you're looking for your deals?
So that difficulty is what promotes the opportunity for our company, point blank period. as it relates to how, we're doing business with these folks, in most cases, well, I'm not going to say in most cases, in a lot of the cases, they are existing buildings that are already in operation that they're going to go to a second level, increased unit production per individual building, and or, build out or renovate, what is called a cultivation facility. So for us, how we evaluate these different industry or these different properties is that we tie our relationship to the operators themselves. And then we say, hey, we're in this space because we understand that you have a financing problem as it relates to expanding your company. We also can say that we can evaluate we have evaluated your financials that support the fact that you can bring on this type of sale-leaseback capital. In the rates that we're targeting, our target rate is around 12%. So there's a lot of supporting factors as to the reasons of that. But in the industry, a lot of the large names that you've heard of are getting like IIPR, which is a publicly traded REIT, doing a lot of what we're doing. Their terms are 15 to 20 years, and the cap rates that they're locking these operators in are well north of where we are, 13, 14, 15, 16 plus, which as you look as a business owner, that's not 100% sustainable. So we want to come in at a 3 to 5 year hold, be able to come in at a target 12 cap and be able to say, hey, we understand you're an expanding company. You're in a new industry that's going to allow you to continue to increase sales. We're looking at a pandemic where sales have already increased, right? So that recessionary type of conversation starts to come up. But realistically, from a risk standpoint, we wanted to do business with these individuals because of their strong balance sheets and their need to continue to expand to be competitive in the industry. So that's the opportunity, the economics on it from a cap rate perspective, and how we continue to get more of them. And
do you use any leverage?
We do, yes. So our target LTV is anywhere from 50 to 65%. Really? And again, the nuance here is well, you can't get traditional lenders that are backed by the Fed for reasons that we need the SAFE Banking Act to be pushed through. So what we are able to do is find private lenders, whether those are family groups, whether they are just private lending bodies that have a fund that want to place on a strategy. And then our rates are reasonable as it relates to the market within there. But yes, we do leverage these properties.
Mm-hmm. Walk us through your first deal, timing wise. Yeah. Walk us through the whole story of how that happened.
Sure. So on the fund side of things, we've taken, probably the better part of the first 12 months to actually consolidate our deal flow. We looked at this actually a bit backwards from the standpoint of being able to build our pipeline and then take it to market. So about 2 months ago, we actually launched the inauguration of our fund. So that first close is still coming. But from where we were, we knew that to be able to nurture the relationships with these established operators was going to be mission critical for our success long term. So where we are now, I don't have that story for you yet, but I can tell you all of the different trips, all of the different due diligence steps that we've had as it relates to collecting our 44 property lists that we have now that we're actually bringing to market, that we're engaging with a number of investors and looking to close on within the next couple of weeks to months. So table that one and we'll come back to it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, amazing. Let's just discuss which geographic locations you're. Do you have any particular geographic locations? There's certain states that you are more interested over others?
There are interesting states, yes, but a lot of our strategy has been dictated by the operators. So we have properties in California, Utah. We have available properties in California. Utah is a little complicated. Pennsylvania, Michigan, New Jersey, Illinois, Maine, Massachusetts, and a number of other ones. So there isn't that barrier because effectively we can still perform the same level of due diligence that we need to be able to say this company can pay their cap rate based on their financials, and they're obviously an operating business. But again, being able to go to them and say, hey, how can we help? And they say, oh, we have a $35 million sale-leaseback portfolio. And that consists of Ohio, that consists of Illinois, that consists of PA, and that consists of Michigan. we can then package that together and present it to our investors and obviously close on any or all of those properties for them.
And is it going to be a closed fund with your investors, meaning your investors come in and they're in it for the whole time?
Yeah, so right now it's open, but we're tying our shares per property, right? So if an individual wanted to come in for a larger number that would allow us to close on multiple properties, we'll obviously fractionalize that ownership per property. But at the moment, we aren't putting a closure or a target number on it for reasons of that Illinois project that we have is north of $50 million. And one of the ones that we have in a state next to ours is just shy of $1 million, right? So there's a wide range of deals that we're looking into. And, we want to be able to start that closing process and then be able to say, hey, this is it for this fund. We'll be able to launch fund 2 and close on more than forward.
So so now that you're in the growing, and Levon, we're going to get to you in 1 minute. This is a very interesting, it's a new business for me. It's very interesting. So you're kind of getting the deal flow first and then
Correct.
Going to the investors. So how have you like gotten the credibility to be able to get, potential sellers to be, to take you seriously?
Yeah.
So what have you been, a lot of our, we have a lot of young people on our network that are starting off their own businesses. And it's like the chicken and egg type of predicament where, do you first get the deal or do you first get the capital? So
Yeah.
how are you going about that?
So luckily enough, we've been able to leverage the team very, very much so in this situation. The head of our acquisitions team, Adam Mintz, has been in the industry for over 13 years. So from an operations standpoint, all the way to writing and facilitating white paper that was later adopted by the federal government. Right. So then being able to work with who we have of 9 brand name operators, he's been already able to facilitate relationships with them through the years of working through cannabis as a black market, cannabis as a gray market, now cannabis as being green for business. So given those sets of relationships, it's been very easy for us actually to facilitate, hey, here's who we are, here's what we're doing. We need to be able to package this deal together to bring to the investors. And since that's been a rather easy process for us to obtain all of those potential opportunities and be able to back it by Adam and his experience in the industry, that's what's allowed us to do the reverse of what's most typically common.
Interesting. And Levon, and going back to your business, where you mentioned that you specialize in workforce housing, have you taken advantage of any of the either low-income housing tax credits or a HAP contract for your properties, or is it just workforce in the sense that it's affordable for your tenant base?
So on the workforce side, so I have a contract on a property that has a HAP contract, but what I've seen so far, which is making me kind of second guess whether that's the route that I actually want to go down, is that doing things with the government typically takes too long. Their whole process is not necessarily one of expedience. And so on the workforce side, there's enough private foundational money that has interest in subsidizing for your workforce, such as teachers and nurses and first responders, that I'm almost to the point where I'm saying, if I have a facilitated relationship to get certain subsidies, such as low income housing tax credit, to maybe build onto a building, not necessarily from like a acquisition standpoint, but from a growth standpoint, I would probably take it. But like in terms of acquisition and that sort of thing, I don't like long processes that makes the deal kind of like, it's kind of like the chicken and the egg, raising the money and just having it sitting there versus like being able to get deals done, being able to implement your strategy and move forward.
And what about well, so what about HUD financing? So where that's also a long process, but the benefits of getting a HUD loan on a property is better than, you can on if especially for a refinance, you can potentially get more proceeds than selling the property, and you can own it, and you can still own the property. So have you had any experience with using HUD loans?
So that the best part of our business is that we've been in the mortgage industry for a very long time. So in terms of acquisition, not using HUD financing because the process is long, but for refinance, this is perfect. And in Florida, we have like a Florida housing fund that for affordable housing, you can get rates as low as 0%.
Hmm. Now, let's say it's Mark Feld on one side of the fence and Levon, and we're both competing against to get one property. What are you doing to win that property? How are you distinguishing yourself as the right buyer?
So the thing that I think is my strong piece in business is that I have never met a stranger. Whenever I go out and I meet sellers, they tend to tell me their life story, whether I want to hear it or not. But it makes them comfortable, and because I'm able to bring a lot of genuine care because of what I'm doing in the community. A lot of genuine care because of what I'm doing in the community. I get a lot of like, you know what, I want to sell you this property, even though it may not, because it's probably not going to be your highest offer if it's on market, but I'm going to close, and I'm going to care, and I'm going to take care of your tenants.
Right, and you certainly have a more interesting story than I do. Now, you mentioned find if it's an on-market property. Have you had experience with purchasing off-market properties directly from a seller, or are most of your deals deals that are marketed through a regular brokerage?
Both. So we are living in the time where like everybody says that they have an off-market property and it's through some brokerage, and it usually is overpriced, and it's just not being shopped through your typical MLS sort of a system. I find that when I just reach out to people who I know owners who are looking to retire, I get better deals, obviously. Because they usually don't have debt on them. They've owned them personally for a long time, and they have some sort of a care to the community sort of appeal. I do also buy on market property. I mean, I'm just offering what I'm offering. So it's like a take it or leave it sort of a situation. I'm not really emotionally attached to any specific buildings or anything like that. So I'm just, partially just want to be a part of the community, but also make sure that, you can get the type of returns that you expect for the asset class.
Interesting. And I guess let's go back to, we did speak a lot about, the business side. If you had to, let's bring back the sports world a little bit, and we'll go to Evan. Evan, what was the best piece of advice that you've received could be a coach, from a teammate, that has helped you in your career so far?
The individual is Coach Meyer. And the piece of advice was, and we had wristbands that said E plus R equals O, and not many people understand it until you hear the story. But if you think very critical about it, you can't control the events that are thrown at you in any way, right? Like I can't control if this table flips over and the glass shatters all over it, but I can control my response to get a desirable outcome, right? Like, so if I'm thinking about the outcome that I want to get to, whether it is the glass breaking off my table or closing on all of the available properties that can be, and I'm going to have uncontrollable events on the front end of that, right? How do I respond in those moments so that our percentage hit rate is desirable? And ultimately, and in our sense, right, it was we can't control if Carlos Hyde fumbles in the 2-minute warning, right? We can't control if the ref throws a PI on Durant Grant in the heat of the game, but we can control that response, come back, regroup, and then make sure that we go to our desired outcome with whatever's needed at that point. So that was one thing that I've been able to take with me as an athlete, but certainly as a businessman as well.
That's excellent. You heard it here. It's worth coming just for that. Now, yeah. Levon, if you had one lesson that you picked up from somebody in the sports world, what would you say that was?
I had a coach. His name is Dennis Mitchell, and he basically told me that, like, you can't help where you start, but you can't help where you finish. So the backstory being that I don't have really good endurance. And so the beginning of the season, I really suck. I'm usually in the really far back, like, ooh, horrible. And he's like, we don't use excuses as the impediment to not get better. So every day I had to push myself to get a little closer, a little closer, a little closer. And it ended up happening where I had good endurance by the end of the season. But it's like you can't control where you start, but if you put in the work every single day, that you will be much better off than, where you started.
Okay, so we're gonna start ending it off. And obviously I want to go to one last question, and I don't know if we have any questions from the audience. If you do have a question, feel free to put it in the Q&A. But obviously this is going to be the most important question of the day. This is going to go to Evan. Evan, you versus Levon in a race. Who's winning?
Okay, so first question is, how far are we running? No.
Important question.
It is an important question, trust me. But no, I'm definitely taking Levon, man. I mean, I run still, but it's more maintenance. Like I said, I'm a golfer now, so my sprinting days are past me. For context, when I was going through the process, at my pro day, I did my 40. My brother had the slowest time, unfortunately enough, because he's a scout in the league. It's a long story. I'll save it. But ran a 4.38 in the 40, right? But as that distance gets longer, those times unfortunately come with it, right? I ran the 200, but I really ran like 180 yards or 180 meters, if you know what I'm saying. But yeah, no. So I'm giving it to Levon, 100%.
All right, amazing. Well, I guess that's going to wrap it up. But before we go, both of you guys have very interesting backstories, and I've speak to a lot of people that are, getting started or have recently in their careers, and it seems like you guys are both going to have amazing real estate careers. I can assure you. So if any folks from our network want to get in touch or want to hear more or potentially want to invest, what would be the best way to how do people reach you?
Sure. Our company phone number is simple. It's 614-259-7205. Email address is just info@projectalpha.vc. But I'm very much on LinkedIn, social media, on Instagram as well. So anything that's convenient for folks that want to ask more questions, either of those sources are great. And again, it's just a very traditional practice in an expanding industry, and that's what we're doing.
Amazing. What about you, Levon?
So my email address is levon@firstclassgroup.com, but the first is 1ST. I'm always on LinkedIn. Add me, send me a message. I'm on all social medias as Lala Hurdles too, and reach out. I'd love to chat.
All right, so I want to thank you both for joining us today. This is a fantastic conversation. Really good to have some positive energy and you guys shared some really valuable lessons with us. And I wish on behalf of all of us at Riverside, we really wish you guys tremendous luck in your careers and keep doing what you guys are doing. So thanks again.
Thank you.
For joining us.
This has been awesome.
Okay.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thank you.
All right.